Hi, everyone. Welcome to Been All Around This World, a podcast that explores the life's work of folklorist and documentarian Alan Lomax. My name is Nathan Salzberg, and I'm your host. Listeners who've kept up with the program, and I can't call you regular listeners because there's little regularity to our programming, will recall that the last few installments of the show have delved into traditions, regions, and musicians recorded by Lomax and his assistant Shirley Collins on their 1959 field trip throughout the American South, the so-called Southern Journey. We attempted to commemorate some of those recordings on the occasion of their 60th anniversary this past fall, and this episode was meant to join the others then. But I was admittedly daunted by the prospect of taking it on. The Mississippi State Penitentiary at Parchman Farm was arguably the most infamously backward and brutal of all the southern prison plantations, all of which were, by their very nature, backward and brutal. The Lomaxes made recordings at many of them, for reasons we'll discuss, but Parchman comes up far more often than any of the others. This is in part due to the notoriety of the place, and it's also due to the fact that Parchman has had some famous musical alumni, from Son House and Booker White to Mose Allison and Elvis's daddy, Vernon Presley. For those already familiar with the black work songs of the Southern penitentiaries, you're likely most familiar with those recorded at Parchman, where the Lomaxes, between them, visited and recorded 5 times between 1933 and 1959. That said, Angola in Louisiana is perhaps the other most famous prison farm, best known for its rodeo and, for music fans, it being the site of the first recordings of Leadbelly and later of Robert Pete Williams. As I said, I started to tackle this episode this past fall, as it was on the Southern Journey trip when Lomax made the last of his Parchman recordings, notable for being the first recordings done of the group work songs in stereo. But travel and reticence got in the way, and I kicked it down the road till now, moved into some kind of response, however impotent, by the continuing news reports out of Mississippi about Parchman prisoner suicides, murders, or otherwise dead by unidentified causes. If you've not been paying attention, and God knows there's plenty of dispiriting news to distract you these days, the short of it is that prisoners are being killed and conditions are spiraling out of control in the Mississippi Department of Corrections. Some 12 inmates have died in the system since the year began. 9 of these were at Parchman. There's an unmanaged, if not unmanageable, gang problem at Parchman and elsewhere, and many prisoners have used contraband cell phones to send distress calls and texts to the outside, afraid for their lives. But those phones have also documented the grotesque living conditions of the place, from dead rodents to mold to blocked plumbing to meals unfit for human consumption. State government can say what it likes, and Mississippi's new governor is doing plenty of talking, but it's the vaunted virtue of so-called conservative leadership behind the budget cuts and acute staff shortages that this time has pushed Parchman to the limit. And like the federal class action brought against Parchman in 1971, Gates versus Collier, which successfully argued that the prison had long engaged in cruel and unusual punishment, and which forced a federal reorganization in 1974, a new lawsuit has been filed claiming the same. You might have heard about this due to the support given to the prisoner plaintiffs by the likes of Jay-Z and Yo Gotti, or seen the reports in the Times and other national outlets. Fundamentally, though, Parchman is what Parchman's always been, and there are now many calls from many quarters about finally shutting the place down for once and for all. Well, you'll see why I was dragging my feet about putting this episode together. Our focus here then will be on the recordings made by 4 men, John A. Lomax, Herbert Halpert, Alan Lomax, and Bill Ferris, at Parchman Farm between 1933 and 1969. These were recordings made at the old Parchman, a Parchman that was, quite simply, a plantation in the antebellum mold with slave labor performed by prisoners. In the place of the old master, it was the warden, or more accurately, the state of Mississippi itself, who profited off of a forced labor pool consistently supplied by a legal and penal system constructed almost exclusively with the priority of perpetuating white supremacy, an enduring Mississippi-sized middle finger to the failed attempts made during Reconstruction to enfranchise and legitimize black citizenship. John Lomax, in his search for the black folk song he considered, quote, the least contaminated by white influence or by modern Negro jazz, end quote, found that the Southern penitentiary system provided what he called our best field. In the 11 southern state penitentiaries, Lomax assumed, rightly, that he would find that the group work songs of the Black South, fast disappearing in the free world, would have been preserved in the strictly segregated world of the prisons, where black and white prisoners, and of course, in the land of Jim Crow, there are far more of the former, worked, ate, slept, worshipped, and recreated separately. Parchman wasn't the first prison that John Lomax, with his 18-year-old son Alan in tow, would visit on their first field trip in the summer of 1933, but it would prove to be the most fecund. Between 1933 and 1939, John Lomax would record many, many dozens of songs from Parchman inmates, male and female, and not just the group work songs and field hollers, but also game songs, blues, ballads, toasts, and many sacred performances. His first attempts at capturing the work songs, however, failed miserably, as the instantaneous disc-cutting machine was hopelessly inadequate to capture the voices of some 100 men along what was called the line, the long line of inmates inching forward as one, their voices singing at their work, whether clearing ground with hoes, chopping wood with axes, or picking cotton and dragging sacks behind them. Instead, John set up with small groups or individual performers during their noontime break. Thus, the Lomaxes were never able to record the actual line at work, and instead the records they made are reenactments of the work and singing. We'll begin with a couple of pieces from the first session held by the Lomaxes at Parchman in August 1933. We'll hold off on the group work songs for now till we can hear the better recordings made later, and start with a very heavy performance by a singer named Frank Devine and an unidentified partner, a piece identified as In the Sweet By and By. You're listening to Been All Around This World.
What did you do, oh boys, to get so long? I killed a mule going down a barn. He got me here rolling on the big state farm, I went to that old judge, my special in my hand. Good morning, judge. I killed a man. That judge took my special, he laid it up on the shelf. Ah, look at here, nigga, you done hung yourself. He give it to the Jew, Plug wrote it down. Give him 99 years on the big state farm. Oh, rock the baby. Oh, say that. Don't let him cry. Thought I'd be home in the by and by.
Ready for that? On get up in the morning soon, baby. Drink your morning tea. Well, get up in the morning soon, baby. Drink that morning tea. Please, don't you know, I say, it's one more thing I want to do. Get up in the morning soon and drink my morning tea. I went to the table, tea on the table, the coffee getting cold. Had to get up in the morning soon and drink my morning tea. Please, ma'am, get up in the morning soon. Please, ma'am, get up in the morning soon. Get up in the morning soon and drink my morning tea.
Three pieces recorded by John A. Lomax during his first visit to Parchman Farm in August of 1933. We first heard Frank Devine with an unidentified singing partner, something called In the Sweet By and By. A prisoner identified only as Bowlegs at Parchman's Camp 12, performing a holler identified as Drink My Morning Tea. And we heard a group of unidentified prisoners perform a spiritual, He Never Said a Mumbling Word. John Lomax made return visits to Parchman in the springs of 1936 and 1937, during which time he made two of my favorite recordings to come out of the place. They're not work songs, but no less powerful. The first is a performance of the Reconstruction-era anthem, "Oh Freedom," a song that would later become identified with the Civil Rights Movement. It's sung by a group of women led by M.B. Barnes at the Parchman Women's Camp. The other singers are Luella Dade, Passion Buckner, Alberta Turner, Bertha Riley, Lily Mallard, Christine Shannon, and Josephine Douglas. And I say their names because every opportunity we have to reaffirm their individuality and humanity is a corrective, however tardy and however small, to the system that created and sustained Parchman, and may I say still sustains it. Also because when John Lomax made those 1933 recordings at the prison, he only took down some of the singers' names, and in fact, none of the women he recorded during that trip in the Parchman sewing room were identified. Thankfully, come 1936, he thought better of it.
Diamond Joe, come get me. Diamond Joe, come get me. Diamond Joe, come get me. Diamond Joe. Went up on that mountain, give my horn a blow. Thought I heard Miss Maybell say, "Y'all come my boo." Diamond Joe, come and get me. Diamond Joe, come and get me. Diamond Joe, come and get me. Diamond Joe.
Hold it, name.
Ain't gonna work in the country, neither on Forces Farm. I'm gonna stay till my Maybell come, and she gonna call me Tom. Diamond Joe, come and get me. Diamond Joe, come and get me. Diamond Joe, come and get me, Diamond Joe.
Sing it, boy. You
ain't gonna tell you no story, and neither would a lie. One of that my baby said, did she keep on by? Diamond Joe, come and get me. Diamond Joe, come and get me. Diamond Joe, come and get me. Diamond Joe.
Sing, Joe, boy.
Diamond Joe, where you find him? Diamond Joe, where you find him? Diamond Joe, where you find him? Diamond Joe. Diamond Joe, come and get me. Diamond Joe, come and get me. Diamond Joe, come and get me. Diamond Joe.
Talk it.
Ain't gonna work in the country, and he don't force his farm. I'm gonna stay till my baby come, and she gonna call me Tom. Diamond Joe, come and get me. Diamond Joe, come and get me. Diamond Joe, my black Joe.
Diamond Joe, performed by Big Charlie Butler at Parchman Farm in April 1936, one of the most powerful recordings John Lomax ever managed to make over the course of his 10 years of making such field recordings. Little is known about Butler, and much of what is owed to the researcher Stephen Wade, whose book, The Beautiful Music All Around Us, devotes a chapter to Charlie and his Diamond Joe. Butler was 40 years old at the time of this recording, the first that he made of the song, and he'd make two more, one for Lomax and one for Herbert Halpert. And he was 1 year into a 10-year sentence for attempted murder with an axe. In fact, this was his second 10-year bit at Parchman for the same crime. He had been a resident of Tunica, Mississippi, and his escape from the county farm there had landed him again in the state penitentiary. Alan Lomax attempted to contact Butler in 1943 to secure his permission to issue this recording of Diamond Joe in what became the Library of Congress's Afro-American Blues and Game Songs album. But Lomax's letter was returned unopened with the inscription, "Gone free, left no address." Butler had been pardoned 6 months earlier.
One after four, and she give me gasoline.
By the mid-1930s, Herbert Halpert was an experienced folklorist and documentarian who'd been working with the Federal Theater Workshop in New York City and roving out into the Catskills, the Poconos, and the Jersey Pines to do folk song and story collecting. He visited Parchman Farm in 1939 with Abbott Ferris, director of the Federal Writers Project in Mississippi, on part of a longer recording trip through the state, the two conducted in a converted ambulance they called their Soundmobile. What set Halpert's sessions at Parchman apart from those that John Lomax had done, or those Alan Lomax would do, was that Halpert spent a considerable amount of time in the women's camp, recording not just spirituals and work songs, but game songs, blues, and lyrics that the prisoners had composed themselves. Perhaps Halpert's greatest meeting was with a singer called Mattie Mae Thomas, who had experience with imprisonment since at least 1925, when she had done time in the Shelby County Workhouse in Memphis. One of the songs Thomas performed for Halpert, she said she'd learned during her time in the workhouse in Memphis, but that she'd fleshed out with her own ideas. A made-up song, she called it, sung when she was lonely. Some of the images and the turns of phrase that you'll hear in this piece are simply astonishing. Mattie Mae Thomas singing the Workhouse Blues.
Just by being in prison alone. In the empty valley, black man, in the year 1909, I was a little young hobo in that valley from all up and down the line. I rambled through the state, baby, all up and down the line. I wrestle with the loud black man, with the lions on the mountain tide. I pull the hair, black man, hair strain by strain. Snakes in spider, Lord, begin to bite my poor heart. But let me tell you, baby, they crawled away and died. I wrestle with the house, black man, hounds of hell all day. I squeeze them so tight until they fade away. I swim the blue sea with the mountains on my back. I mean, I conquered all the lines, and I even tied the panthers back.
Alan Lomax made his first solo visit to Parchman in November 1947, eager to use his new Magnacord tape recording machine, the first truly portable machine on the market, which he knew would provide an improved document of the power of the work songs. He returned the following February in what seemed to be a tribute to his father, who had died of a heart attack just a week and a half earlier during a visit to Greenville, Mississippi. The recordings Alan made over these two visits were issued in an LP in 1958 called Negro Prison Songs. It was the first introduction the vast majority of its listeners had ever had to this music, starkly presented as it was, with a simple impressionistic rendering of a big house composed entirely of prison bars on its cover. These songs, as Alan wrote in the liner notes to that record, quote, coming out of the filthy darkness of the pen, touched with exquisite musicality, are a testament to the love of truth and beauty, which is a universal human trait, end quote. Here's one of the most well-known of Lomax's late 1940s recordings from Parchman, led by a prisoner known as 22, real name Benny Will Richardson, accompanied by a group of men wielding hoes. It's identified as "It Makes a Long-Time Man Feel Bad." And a note before we hear it, I'm referring to the group songs by titles, both here and in the podcast details online, but it's worth saying that the work songs weren't discrete compositions, but instead improvisations that used floating verses from the collective cache of lyrics. That's not to say a particular singer wouldn't have a particular assortment of verses that he was inclined to string together at certain times in certain conditions, or as Woody Guthrie would say, in certain jobs of work. But the songs were very much like the blues, or vice versa, usually just taking a definitive form once they were recorded or written down for posterity.
It makes a long, old time man or be a man. It makes a long, old time man or be a man. It makes a long,
It makes a longtime man feel bad, led by 22 and a group of prisoners at Parchman Farm's Can't Be, recorded by Alan Lomax in late 1947. I'm referring in this program to the group work songs by the titles given them by their singers or by the recordists. These titles are often the first lines of the songs and were typically how they were cataloged and or published. But it's worth saying that a work song wasn't a discrete composition sung the same way every time, but was instead strung together from a collective cache of floating lyrics that, in form more than content, applied to the particular condition, time, and, as Woody Guthrie would call it, job of work. That's not to say they were always completely improvised. Songs like Rosie or Stewball or Take This Hammer, or at least the recordings that were made of them, have a thematic integrity that persisted not just across several decades of recordings in the various camps at Parchman, but in other camps of other prison farms in other southern states. Remember that one song, as we imagine it, could have gone on for hours. In fact, a good song leader was one who could sustain these songs in the heat under a blazing sun for as long as was required. And different tasks had different rhythms, so a song that accompanied flat weeding with a hoe, for example, might not be brought to bear on log cutting with an axe. The rhythms and the necessity of the prisoners maintaining them as one were essential to their safety. They kept someone from braining their neighbor with an axe, say, but more essentially, they maintained a regularity of movement across the line, so no one prisoner could be singled out for punishment for not working hard enough. For a much more cogent, detailed, and beautifully wrought consideration of the work songs, I can't recommend the work of folklorist and prison documentarian Bruce Jackson enough. His book, Wake Up Dead Man, of and about work songs in the Texas Department of Corrections is an absolute masterpiece, and that's saying nothing about his many recordings made there. See culturalequity.org/podcast for details of Bruce's peerless work. No one can or should mourn the passing of the black work songs of the Southern penitentiaries, sustained as they were in conditions of abject brutality, racism, and exploitation. Even by Lomax's visit to Parchman in the late 40s, he found the custom of work song singing was dying out. Older singers were dying or losing their voices. Some of the younger prisoners were less inclined to sing what they saw as anachronistic holdovers from an even more atavistic period. Modernizing tendencies came late to Mississippi and God knows much later to Parchman, but they couldn't be kept out altogether. Lomax's last trip to the prison was in 1959, and the irony of that visit was that although he had a state-of-the-art Ampex stereo tape machine to finally record the work songs in their full range, the tradition had diminished considerably over the intervening years, and it was rapidly going extinct. We'll hear a couple of those stereo recordings made in '59 at Parchman. First, a tremendously beautiful quartet rendition of a song composed by its leader, one Irvin Webb. You'll hear him explain its origins following the singing. I'm going home.
I'm going home, oh yes. I'm going home, oh yes. I'm going home, Lord, Lord. I'm going home, I'm going home, Lord, Lord. I'm going home. My baby sister's crying, my baby sister's crying. Brother, come home, Lord, Lord. Brother, come home. Brother, come home, Lord, Lord. Brother, come home. I'm going home, oh yes. I'm going home, oh yes. I'm going home, Lord, Lord. I'm going home. I'm going home, Lord, Lord. I'm going home. My old mother's crying, my old mother's crying. Come on home, Lord, Lord. Come on home, come on home, Lord, Lord. Come on home. I'm going home, oh yes. I'm going home, oh yes. I'm going home, Lord, Lord. I'm going home, I'm going home, Lord, Lord, I'm going home. My old father's crying, my old father's crying. Come on home, Lord, Lord, come on home, Lord,
I'm going home, oh yes, I'm going home, oh yes, I'm going home, Lord, Lord, I'm going home, I'm going home, Lord, Lord, I'm going home. I'm going run, you better not catch me. I'm going run, you better not catch me. I'm going home, Lord, Lord, I'm going home. I'm going home, Lord, Lord, I'm going home. If they ask you what running, if they ask you what running like hell, Lord, Lord, running like hell, Lord, Lord, running like hell. I'm going home, oh yes, I'm going home, oh yes, I'm going home, Lord, Lord, I'm going home, I'm going home, Lord, Lord, I'm going home. I'm going home, oh yes, I'm going home, oh yes, I'm going home, Lord, Lord, I'm going home. I'm going home, Lord, Lord, I'm going home.
Tell me what's your name,
Irvin Webb.
and where did you learn that song, Irvin?
Just composing my own, makeup.
When was that?
In 54.
And what were you thinking about when you made it up? Were you out on the line?
It's out on the line, but I was thinking about going home.
What were you remember the day you composed it?
I believe it was on a Saturday evening.
Why did you happen to think about it, do you know?
That was one of my biggest times that I have out in the free world on a Saturday evening.
I see. And you just started singing it, right?
Just
then?
started singing it. Just got on my mind, and I just started humming to myself and just continued.
And did other people start singing with you then?
Well, a few days later, and we was working together, the whole line, and I started on it, and they joined in and began to help me.
Though some folks says that the devil's dead, though some folks says that the devil's dead, I spot Tom Devil at the head of my bed, I spot Tom Devil at the head of my bed, and go away, devil, devil, and leave me alone. Oh, go away, devil, devil, and leave me alone. Gonna pray and do better from this day on. Gonna pray and do better from this day on. Say it's too late to pray, you will have to die today. It's too late to pray, you will have to die today. Oh, axes talking a while, chips on flying. Oh, the axes talking a while, chips on flying. Oh, maybe I put on again. Oh, maybe I put on again. Oh, maybe, girl, if it just says so. Oh, maybe, girl, if it just says so. Know the bottom of your pocketbook, it'll never be seen. Know the bottom of your pocketbook, it'll never be seen. When you won't do nothing but wash and iron. You won't have to do nothing but wash and iron. Oh, when you marry a railroad man. Oh, when you marry a railroad man. Every day your son or dollar is in your hand. Every day your son or dollar is in your hand. That looks like Mamie coming down the road.
like Mamie coming down the road.
Well, down the road.
It walks just like her butt. She walks too slow.
She walks too slow.
It walks just like her butt. She walks too slow.
Well, you walk too slow.
She walks just like she's carrying some heavy load.
Well, a heavy load.
She walks just like she's carrying a heavy load.
Well, a heavy load.
Try and look on your finger, maybe. Oh, think of me.
Well, a thing on me.
Oh, look on your finger, maybe. And think of me.
Well, think of me.
See the ring I bought you when
Don't
oh, I was free.
Well, oh, wow.
See the ring I bought you when
Well,
oh, I was free.
Well, I was free.
Oh, you and Marie, I'm living. Oh, like you please.
Like you please.
Oh, you and Marie, I'm living. Oh, like you please.
Well, like you please.
Crying I'm on Parchman, got to
well.
wake or leave.
And wake or leave.
Crying I'm on Parchman, got to
well.
wake or leave.
Well, wake or leave.
Oh, wake or leave, Lord. Oh, wake or leave.
Well, wake or leave.
Crying I'm on Parchman, got to
well.
wake or leave.
Well, wake or leave.
Well, I don't gamble and
well.
oh, I don't see.
Well, I don't see.
Well, I don't gamble and
well.
oh, I don't see.
Well, I don't see.
Oh, how my money gets
well.
away from me.
Well, away from me.
Oh, how my money gets
well.
away from me.
Well, away from me.
I would write the governor, but
well.
that'll do no good.
Well, day,
I would write the governor, but that'll do no good.
well, do no good.
I ain't got no money in that. That's a good excuse.
Well, a good excuse.
I ain't got no money in that.
Well,
a good excuse.
Well, a good excuse.
Well, early in the morning, baby.
well.
Oh, when I ride.
Well, when I ride.
Well, early in the morning, baby.
well.
Oh, when I ride.
Well, when I ride.
3840 stick.
well.
Oh, in my face.
In my face.
3840 stick.
well.
Oh, in my face.
Well, in my face.
That'll kill any devil big.
well.
Enough to die.
Well, enough to die.
That'll kill any devil big.
well.
Enough to die.
Well, to die.
The singing of a work song that riffs on the theme of Old Tom Devil, led by a gifted singer named Johnny Lee Moore. He was joined by Ed Lewis, Henry Mason, and another prisoner named James Carter. You might know Carter from his having led the singing of a version of the work song Poor Lazarus, also recorded by Alan Lomax during this 1959 visit. That performance ultimately appeared on the soundtrack to Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Oh, well, I said, oh, yeah. It told us David, oh, yes. Won't you go out and bring me leather?
James Carter was flown on his first ever flight to the 2001 Grammy Awards with his wife and 3 daughters, where that soundtrack won Best Album of the Year. When he was located in a Chicago hospital a week earlier, he had had no recollection of making the recording, much less any idea it was on a multi-million selling soundtrack album. He was presented with a $20,000 royalty check and, as the story goes, at the Grammy after party, was approached by Emmylou Harris, who told him that she liked his singing. He replied, "Thanks, son, I'll have another drink." James Carter died in November of 2003. The Mississippi-born filmmaker, recordist, writer, professor, and general cultural advocate William Ferris was the last person to make field recordings at Parchman. He visited in 1969 and again in 1974. The tapes from this latter session, tracks for the film he was shooting at the time, testify to the obsolescence of the work songs, as on them you can hear older prisoners coaching younger or newer ones how to hold and drop their axes and how the lyrics went for the sake of recreation for the camera. You can find these edited films on folkstreams.net, as well as on a DVD issued by Dust to Digital. Also released by Dust to Digital is the extensive and very beautiful set Voices of Mississippi, compiling an assortment of Ferris's Southern field recordings, photographs, and moving images. The next song we'll hear is drawn from that set and from Bill's 1969 Parchman recordings, identified as Waterboy Drowned in Mobile Bay.
Come on, all of y'all, now let's go here. Let's go, all of us. Did you hear about the water boy drowning in the Mobile Bay? Did you hear about the water boy drowned? Did you hear about the water boy drowned in the Mobile Bay, Lord? The Mobile Bay. He says he drowned in 40 feet of water. Well, he dropped in 40 feet of water. And over here, hey, Lord, over here. And did you hear about Llewellyn water? Did you hear about Llewellyn water? The poor girl dead, Lord. The poor girl dead. Say she died in York, Alabama. Well, she died in York, Alabama. That's a home, Lord, Lord. That's a home. Say she died with her tuberculosis. He says she died with her tuberculosis. And her right side, her right side. But
for anyone interested in the history of Parchman Farm before and after the period of white folklorists visiting to record work songs, the Rutgers professor Michael Oshinsky wrote a very good and very harrowing book called Worse Than Slavery that tells Parchman's story from its establishment in 1904 as an answer to the unspeakable crimes against humanity committed in the post-Reconstruction system of convict leasing through the 1971 lawsuit that reorganized the place. That book ends with a quote from 1975 by a convict named Horace Carter, who'd been at Parchman for 50 years. What was missing in the so-called new Parchman, Mr. Carter said, was, quote, the feeling that work counted for something. Awful bad as it was in most camps, that kept us tired and kept us together and made me feel better. I'm not looking to go backwards. I know the troubles in old Parchman better than any man alive. I'm 73 years old, but I look around today and see a place that makes me sad. We'll conclude this episode of the podcast with the voice of a prisoner and song leader named Houston Erms at Parchman's Can't Be. For reasons we'll never know, Lomax found the time in 1959 to sit down with Erms and conduct a long interview with him. It's a moving piece of personal narrative that is sadly nearly unique in its depth, given the grievously spotty record of Parchman prisoner histories. We'll hear an improvised holler by Erms and then a portion of that long interview. Thanks for listening this time around to Been All Around This World. It's a production of the Association for Cultural Equity. My name is Nathan Salzberg. I'm curator of the association's Alan Lomax archive and your host. If you're not a subscriber to the program, we invite you to become one on Stitcher or iTunes or wherever your pleasure. Visit culturalequity.org/podcast for a list of various resources related to Parchman Prison work songs. And I also recommend the Clarion Ledger out of Jackson, Mississippi for staying informed about current developments in the Mississippi Department of Corrections in general, and Parchman Farm specifically. Thanks for listening. Take good care, everyone.
Brought me here an old lady for brought me here an old lady for ain't been able to get back home no more.
Home no more, Rosie, home no more. Ain't been able to get back home no more. Tell my mother when you go home, eh? Tell my mother when you go home. Left me rolling, but I ain't got long. Ain't got long, boys, I ain't got long. Left me rolling, but I ain't got long. This old place ain't no place for me. This old place ain't no place for me. Vicksburg and Jackson, where I belong to be. Tell my mother when you go to the hills, boy. Tell my mother when you go to the hills, boy. Left me rolling at the molasses mill.
And you'd sing all that out in the field, would you?
Yes.
And any special time of day?
No, sir, not no special time. Just any time when we be out in the field or nothing around but just as men.
Mm-hmm. Well, what do you think it takes to make a good leader of the work songs?
He been innocent in his work and also innocent in the songs that he be singing, and therefore that'll make him hit with the song.
Uh-huh.
And it seems like the time passes away a lot more faster.
Mm-hmm.
When you know anything, the sergeant or the driver will be telling you it's dinner time before you know it. And it makes an easy day. Lots of times in songs, seems like they be hard. You be sweating from them, but it don't be hard. Not if you know how. Anything, you have to know how to do anything that you choose, you know. Of course, eating is hard if you don't want to do it. Your jaws get tired.
Mm-hmm.
But I never have dread. Nothing I had to go up against, like work. I tries to do my part, do my portion, and I never had no trouble. Of course, I had lots of whoopings back in the young days when I was younger. Well, I had a bad record when I came here, so I guess my record was causing me getting so many whoopings. And that, lots of times, can be too brutish on a child. Just like the sergeant is over us. And well, we men's, but we got to act as a child because we're in a place of punishment. You know.
Lots of times we fret him, and he fret us. But we still have to take it and go on because we're in a place of punishment. And you can't be too brutish on nothing that you got say-so's over, because lots of times you can make it give you more trouble by being brutish on it, because it gets mean and stubborn a lots of times, just like an old mule or something. And also, just like if you have a child, you can be too brutish on that child and run him away from home, and can make a mean child out of him by being too brutish. And then lots of times you can be too good. But as a group of men like we are here, there's some you can be good to appreciate it, and some won't.
When you were a little boy, did your parents whip you a lot?
My father did. My mother didn't. And my mother tried to give me a schooling. And my father, he's kind of brutish on our children's, girls and the boys. And he refused to give me a schooling. I wanted to go to school, and I was learning good while going to school. And my mother wanted me to go, and him and my mother got in a fight. He had killed a hog and cut him up on the table. My mother wanted me to go to school. She told me that I had to go to school and come back. When I come back from school, I had to pull off my shoes to keep from wearing them out. And the next morning, I get ready. I comb my hair, brush my teeth, put on my little shoes, my little starch and iron pants, get ready to go to school. So my mother told me to get ready that morning to go to school. And my father told me I'd go out there and catch old mule. I had a dead old mule named Bob, and he told me to go catch the mule and go plowing. And I started putting on my little pants to go to school. And my father and mother got in a fight. And he jumped on my mother because she wanted me to go to school, and he wanted me to plow. What they call a two-fun, run down the side of the road and cut some off the road with a turning plow. And he wanted me to plow. He jumped on my mother and made me get out of my little school clothes, little clean school clothes that I had to wear, and made me go to the field and go to plowing. And my mother cut him, chunked a shoulder of meat in that piece of that bone in that shoulder, cut him across the nose, it lasted him to his grave. Fighting because she wanted me to go to school and he refused to let me go. So therefore I didn't have any learning. I came up, growed up without any learning. I learned Sergeant let me went to school since I've been here back there at this time. This is my first time under him. And he let me went just 1 year. Now I can write my sisters. Just one time. He didn't think I was going to do so well because he told me he didn't think I was going to do so well in school because he had me mapped out to be what they call a hell raiser. He told me to think I would raise too much hell in school for the learning thing. And I proved out I wouldn't raise none.
Is that right, Sergeant? Good.
I'm trying to be good. And as far as officials, ain't none of them bothers me. I have no right to grumble about the officials. I'm doing fine. Of course, I'm in line. I'm doing fine in line. No right to grumble. White folks don't bother you. All the trouble you have is with your inmates, the one you're dealing with. Mm-hmm. That's the biggest trouble I have had since I've been here. No right to grumble.
Tell me, why did your father, how did your father whip you? What did he whip you with?
He whooped me with a plow line. He doubled about 3 or 4 times.
My God. When you were a little boy?
Yes. I was around about 10 or 11 years old. And made me go to plowing and kept me in the field plowing for 2 weeks. And then the 3rd week, he told me he would plow. I could go to school. And I told him, no, sir, I'll plow on now, because I done forgot all that I had ever known. I don't know anything now, because when I get to school, the lesson where I was supposed to have, I have to skip over that and catch up with the other children. And that's still, I'd be going through the book, but I still wouldn't be learning the lesson. Because I'd be skipping over probably the important part of it.
And did you grow up working on a farm when you were?
Yes, I grew up.
Where was that?
Yazoo City.
Uh-huh. And then when you, how soon did you leave home?
The first time I left home, my father was so brutish. He run me away. He whooped me about plugging a watermelon. I ran away and went to my sister. We was living out from Yazoo City. Supposed to have been 15 miles on the other side of Yazoo City on Mr. George Smith's place. And I left and run away and come up here to Isola to my sister. I had a sister up there named Eula. She had a husband by the name of Henry Sanders. I run away and come up there. And my father found out where I was, and he come and got me, told me he wasn't gonna whoop me. And I went back. And the next time I run away, he had me in the crib feeding the hogs, and there was a plank on there. It wasn't nailed down. And I stepped on the plank, and the plank kicked up one side, and my leg slipped down through and skinned all that on my leg. And he wanted to put some bluestone on there, and the bluestone would eat that my leg and would hurt it and burn it, so eat a hole in there. And I didn't want to put it in there. I didn't want him to put that on my leg. And he whooped me again, and I ran away again. And my mother came and got me that time. I wouldn't go back with my father. My mother came and got me, and I went back. And I stayed there until my mother and father separated. They separated. He stayed at Yazoo City, and I followed my mother to Rosedale. He asked me who did I want to go with. My mother stayed there with him. I told him I wanted to go with Mama. He told me to go ahead. And so I went on with my mother to Rosedale. And we was in Rosedale in 34 when he died in Yazoo City. Mm-hmm. Him and her never did go back together again. They never did go back together again. So by me not having or learning caused me to put up 90 days on the county farm because I couldn't read. I was walking down the railroad because we had been walking the railroad, but hadn't been nothing coming up missing. And so some boxcars got broke in. Special agents put up a sign there. Keep off, no trespassing. After the boxcars came up, broke in. So I was walking down and big signs sitting up there, and by me couldn't read. I just walked on past the sign, and two special agents was standing out watching. And they picked me up by the water tank. It's a water tank off from the sign down on the railroad. They were standing out there by the water tank, and they came out and picked me up and gave me 90 days in the course on the county farm. $9.06 was the cost. By me not could read. I went down there and did that 90 days. My brother came down there and paid $9.06, and I got off. He got me off. My next trouble was 39. That was back in 33. The next trouble was in 39.
What had you been doing in the meantime? I mean, what kind of work did you do?
Well, my mother would make a crop, and I would ply it for her, so she wouldn't have to pay no one to ply it, and would help her chop it. And idle time, when after I help my mother catch up with her crop, I would work by the day. Work by the day.
On the farm?
Yes, on the farm.
Railroad?
No, sir, just...
Levee camp?
No, sir. Just different places on the farm. For different peoples.
I see.
Practical most of the time, just where I could, whoever was paying the most. That's why I was up to Crenshaw. My mother wrote for me. She moved up there with my sister, and she wrote for me. And I went up there while she was in 36 and got in this trouble in 39. By a woman. Murder by the woman. At that time, I didn't know anything about no law. By being young, I had never been in no trouble before to mount to anything, because I wouldn't call that very much trouble those 90 days because I couldn't read that sign, so no trespassing. That I wouldn't count that nothing outside of this year lives. Judge Alcorn gave me in March in September 39. And I got out on parole in March in 50. I stayed out there 5 years. They said I was entitled to ask for a pardon, which I did. I had to report to a welfare lady, which was Miss Helen Thomason. And I reported to her. And I stayed up there 50. And so my employer, he got drunk. He wasn't supposed to drink, and I wasn't either. And so he got drunk and talking about having me sent back down here, and I reported to Miss Helen. I reported to Miss Helen, and she told me she'd get me another sponsor, either I could get one. So my sister, as I didn't have a wife, she wanted me down there close to her. And so she pointed me and told me I could move down there close to her, and so that's what I did. I changed sponsors and went down there to Tallahatchie County. And Miss Cheney is the head woman down there. And stayed down there with Silas Horton, 51. So I got my old lady went to housekeeping, and we couldn't get along. So I had Miss Cheney call up there to Miss Helen, tell me to get me another sponsor in Quitman County, and she did. And I went to Sledge, Mr. Jimmy Gordon, and that's where I was when I got in this trouble. And Mr. Jimmy Gordon was out west of Sledge, because he got lots of places, but I was on what they call the Lake Place, west of Sledge. Jimmy Gordon and Mr. Tommy Gordon, two brothers.
What was this trouble you got in about this woman?
My first crime? Well, I thought I had a woman I thought was mine, my own, I thought at the time. And didn't knowing all the time that she had already got a man in trouble, one dead and one in the grave, one in the grave and one behind the bars. I didn't know that at the time, didn't even know it until I got in jail and the sheriff told me. She was wearing her alias name at the time that I come in contact with her. She was wearing the name of Martha Reese at the time that I met her. But the high sheriff learned better after I got in trouble and they got ready to have my trial. They looked for her, and that's the way they found that she had got one man killed in Birmingham, Alabama, and come to Mississippi and changed her name to Martha Reese. Done come up here now. Her peoples got that squished in Alabama, and then after I killed this fellow about her, then she run off and went back to Alabama. And that's where they found her when they had my trial. She wasn't at the trial. They wanted her on the witness stand. She wasn't there. So Lawyer Thomas told me, you'd better just go on and take life, not fight the case.
And now you're just going on and make it the best you can till you get out. How much time do you have?
Again, I had life.
Now how much more do you have, you know?
Sergeant told me I had 5 years setback, didn't you, Sergeant? Well, it's all of it running together, ain't it, Sergeant? All of it running together for those 3 charges. I just got 5 years setback. I'll be aged before parole March in 62, I think. In March of 62, Sergeant, I'll be aged before parole. March in 62.
Okay.